Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shades of Entrepreneurship. This is your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. Today, I am here with Wilson, who is a PhD. I'm really excited about this because, again, I've loved learning new things, folks, and this one is very interesting. Wilson, before we get into all of your things entrepreneurship, go ahead and introduce yourself. Who is Wilson?
That's a great question. Thank you for having me. Great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, my name is Wilson Zehr, and I run a company called Sendex. Probably wouldn't recognize that name. It's a software company. Our commercial brand is Zairmail, which is like airmail with the Z on the front. You can see our primary service at www.zairmail.com. In terms of who I am and what direction would you like me to go with that?
Let's start out with your entrepreneurial journey. Let's start out. How did you get into entrepreneurship?
That's a great question. I have an undergraduate degree in finance with a minor in computer science. I started out working as a software engineer, a small software company as a spinoff from Intel, and did that for 5 or 6 years. Really enjoyed it, but I realized at some point that I could work as hard as I wanted, and I could do my job perfectly, and the company could still not be successful. So I wanted to be in a role where I had more control over direction, outcome, that kind of thing. So I went back, I got my MBA, and transitioned into product marketing. So I was a product line manager, then worked on strategic alliances. I managed a global relationship with Oracle Corporation for a very long time, a $300 million business, give or take, for Sequent Computers. And then went into, executive management, entrepreneurship. The first entrepreneur, well, I've been doing entrepreneurial ventures all my life. If you don't count, mowing lawns and washing cars and doing newspapers, delivering newspapers. But I did the first startup I worked on was something called eFusion. It was jointly funded by Intel, Microsoft, France Telecom, and Telecom Italia. And basically what we did was voice over IP. So we did a lot of work with ISPs and telephone carriers. So we created gateways that allowed us to bridge the gap between the internet and the public telephone network. So that one was an interesting ride. We managed to sell that to a provider in Europe and did very well for ourselves and for investors. Went on to do a number of different startups. Zairmail, the original Zairmail's back. I mean, it's a restart. The original Zairmail was jointly funded by Hewlett Packard and Draper Fisher Jurvetson. And DFJ is Tier 1 California VC, best known for things like Skype. Actually, there's still some Skype-like technology that we used in eFusion. And some others, eFax and Homestead and a bunch of internet, internet gold rush kinds of startups, but they're still around. So Zairmail was initially created to bridge the gap between the internet and the postal service, basically to do something called hybrid mail, a category we invented. We were able to grow that company. And then we got hit with kind of the triple whammy. So we got hit with the internet meltdown, which made funds very hard to get, and 9/11 at that point. And then thirdly, in our space, we had the whole anthrax scare,
Oh, yeah.
Right? People were sending letters that killed postal workers, and people were afraid to open the mail. So that was a little challenging. But we were always fairly conservative with our spend rate too. And so when the internet, when the funding dried up, we still had plenty of dry powder, and we were able to work through that. We acquired 2 or 3 different companies, including our largest competitor, which is called eLetter. They were funded by Hummer Windblad. I think they had a burn rate of about 20
I feel
million
like
bucks.
they were pretty big too for a second there. I think I remember eLetter.
I think they were burned through 20 million bucks a quarter or something. And that didn't really work out well for them. So we ended up buying that company too. If you go online today and you type in www.eletter.com, It'll take you right to Zairmail, so you can see that. But anyway, the company was sold to a company and a production partner in Hayward, California, sold to an East Coast company that did transactional printing. I think eventually ended up being part of R.R. Donnelley. I mean, one of the largest printers in the United States, but they kind of lost track of it. So at some point, and we had a maintenance contract for the software. So at some point, we were able to buy back the brand and redo the URLs and put it on a new software, and orders start coming in. So we thought we'll do some more of that. But in the meantime, we worked on surf companies and drone startups, and all different kinds of stuff. I mean, I probably worked on or funded or helped over a dozen startups, and I teach entrepreneurship at the university level, so I've had a lot of chance to provide input in that role. But that's what got us here.
I love it. And again, folks, at Zairmail, it's going to be on the shadesofE.com. So make sure you subscribe to the website, get this information. And what I really love about this product in particular, I'm an old school, kind of sales guy in a way, where I like to send the handwritten cards back to my consumers and give it that little personal touch. And that essentially what Zairmail really does. It kind of allows you to, I think, everybody talks about market segmentations and marketing and their newsletter and blogs and all these other things. But Zairmail just seems to provide a little bit more of a personal touch, right?
Sure. Yeah, we do. Zairmail has the focal point. The original Zairmail started out with a couple versions of the product, but the focal point of Zairmail exists today is to make sending a letter faster and easier. We do that for very large mailers in a lot of ways. So somebody can, our customers can upload a list, upload a document, see a preview, what's going to be produced, push the button, they're in the mail tomorrow, the next day at a fraction of the cost. So that's our primary product. With that said, we're rolling out a new product called Speedy, which is closer to the original product we worked on. And the idea of Speedy is it's a desktop icon you can download. It sits right on your desk. And if you want to send a letter, you'll just grab the document, whether it's or you compose the letter, create use either a Word doc or PDF file, drop it on the icon. It says, where would you like to send it? And you provide an address and out it goes. So you can send even a single letter using Speedy. And we think that's a great opportunity, not just for sending letters like you're talking about. Certainly you could use it to send follow-up sales letters to customers, which, by the way, is a great technique. I mean, it's old school, but it still works just as good as the day it was invented.
Very much so, yeah.
But it also, there's a large, there's a large group of corporate customers in the United States that are still using a Pitney Bowes postal meter machines, right? They've got a postal meter. There's also a lot of people who don't know what that is, but if you're,
we actually have one at our I work in healthcare, and so that's
okay.
I was remembering e-letter. Now I start to remember why we remember e-letter because of our postal service. And again, folks, you have to think about healthcare. If let's say an insurance changes or there's a new guy or something happens that we need to communicate to thousands of people, hundreds of thousands sometimes that we cover. Because again, we're an academic medical center, the only one here in the state of Oregon. We need something like this to be able to push out all that information to disseminate again across this landscape of 96,000 square miles, which is the state of Oregon. That's where I reside. And so this is a really good functional tool. And again, Wilson, I'm pretty sure you're going to probably dig into this as well, but I see a lot of other use cases for it, like mortgage brokers. You're a new realtor and you're hey, welcome to the neighborhood, or maybe you're selling a home. Now, Wilson, with this product, does it also have the functionality? Like, get into the product itself. How much can you kind of disseminate or actually segment your market? Can you get down to say, I just want this zip codes, or how does it kind of work? Or do you have to have the actual physical mailing address in order to send it?
Yeah, it depends on the product you're talking about, the type of mailing. And the product itself, I mean, I don't want to overwhelm anybody with the technical nature You know, I mean, when we first got into this business, we came out of the technology industry. We're a bunch of engineers and gearheads, and we thought, well, it's mail. How hard can it be? And it turns out there's an awful lot to it. The Postal Service has a rule for everything. And then there's the whole printing side where you've got, ink and paper and sizes and formats and speeds and feeds. And we automate that entire process. And in fact, we do our production today. We're primarily a software company. We do our production today through a network of production partners nationwide. And so we're doing, skills-based routing based on what things can be produced best in what places, different time zones. We're spreading jobs across the network to get faster turn times. I mean, our turn times are faster than anybody that I know of. Because we're focused on automation. The thing about lists, you mentioned list. With direct mail, we really. I'm going to answer your question in kind of a roundabout way, if that's okay.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah. So when we're talking about not Speedy is kind of one-to-one communication. You want to send a letter, Speedy makes it fast and easy to do that. If you want to use Speedy, you need to know where you're sending it. You're going to need a delivery address. There's no way around it. And Speedy will track it too. We'll send out that letter. It'll be formatted correctly. It'll have a ZIP+4 barcode. We will track it through the mail, and we will send you an email when it's delivered. So we'll give you delivery confirmation. So that is slam dunk. When we step back into the direct mail as an advertising medium, how a lot of people are using it, typically the success of a direct mail campaign hinges on three elements. One is the list. About 70% of success hinges on the list. Another 20% is the offer, and whatever's left is creative, which is interesting because a lot of people approach it the other way. They start with the design. But what we know from practice over time is that if we put the right offer in front of the right person, good things happen. So it really all starts out with that segmentation, targeting, finding the right audience, and then coming up with an offer that's going to motivate that audience to do something. And so a lot of our customers will have a list, when they get to us, maybe a house list, maybe something they've sourced. If a customer doesn't have a list, we'll provide lists too. We have a electronic interface to Axiom, which is the largest consumer database in the United States. We have an electronic list of Dun & Bradstreet for business address. And we also recently started doing stuff with LexisNexis Risk Solutions. So we'll pull, we could pull credit and tax liens and all kinds of interesting stuff. Just because we know that our customers are more successful with a good quality list. So we wanted to be able to help them provide that for them.
Yeah, and man, folks, if you have not heard of these lists before, they're paid lists. They have a lot of detailed information about certain, like Wilson was mentioning, customer segmentations. Folks, you can also purchase a list if you want a list of all the general cardiologists in your community or in the state or in the United States, right? And all the pulmonologists, all the anesthesiologists. So you can kind of have a lot of these opportunities to get lists. Now, Wilson, one of the things you mentioned that I thought was very interesting, because I always see it, but I really want to understand why we see it. You said zip code +4. So we see these zip code number. Everybody has, right? You have your zip code, and then you see a dash and you see 4 digits. What are those 4 digits?
The whole point of a zip code was allow them to more efficiently route the mail. There was a day long ago, long before I was in this business, where they had no zip codes. It was just a street address in city state. And they came up with a character called Mr. Zippy or Mr. Zip. And you can see him online if you Google him. He's like a cartoon character. And they used that guy to try and convince people to use a zip code so that it was easier to automate. So now we take the zip code and we put it in a barcode that goes just under the address. So the Postal Service, which is highly automated at this point, can just scan that barcode. And in fact, if you put a letter in the mail that does not have a barcode on it today, they go through, they'll route it through a piece of equipment that actually does OCR, takes a picture of it, does the OCR, and then sprays the barcode on it. If you look at your mail, you'll see some that have an orange fluorescent barcode,
Yeah.
and that's basically their automated equipment. So the Zip+4 is just to give them another level of granularity. I mean, they can get down to the carrier route, because ultimately, once that letter gets to, say you're in Miami, Florida, it gets to Miami, Florida. So there are millions of people who live in Miami, Florida. So then it's got to get to a community and a street and an address. And so the Zip+4 just provides another level of granularity, because we need to get it in the bag of the guy who's actually, or person, man or woman, who's going to deliver it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I started thinking about, again, folks, going back in my days, I used to work, again, I work in healthcare. And previously I worked in a department where we actually worked with the mail crew. And so again, this is a crew that, 10 to 15 individuals, and they come in and we get bags. I mean, like, 50-pound bags of mail, and multiple bags, and they come in carts, so just a bunch of mail, and we'd have to sort through all of this mail all day long. And so it sounds like, Wilson, I would love to have like a really good give me a use case scenario, one for Zairmail first, and specifically for like an entrepreneur in regards to like maybe they're opening a new business within the community. How would they use your service the best way?
So you're talking about a new business?
Correct.
It kind of talks, it depends on the business and how you're, who you're trying to target. To be honest with you, I mean, I usually, when people ask me about direct mail as a marketing tool, I try not to just sell direct mail. I try to sell it, to offer it as one tool in the ecosystem based on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, I can share a story.
Yes, please.
We worked on a campaign, a bond measure, for a local school district, in LeGrand, Oregon. You mentioned you were in Oregon.
Beautiful
So
LeGrand.
in
Yes. Eastern Oregon.
Eastern Oregon, right by the Idaho border.
Yeah.
And so the thing about the bond initiative was that, the way taxes are paid there, when they fund this bond, it's paid through incremental property tax financing. So, a certain amount per $1,000 assessed value. So if you own a home, you'll end up paying that. If you don't, then, I mean, you get the benefits of it. Maybe you'll pay a little higher rent, but I mean, at the same time, you don't pay it in the direct way that a homeowner does. So what we did when we started out that campaign is we're trying to identify who we're trying to reach. So we targeted, the people in the community, and we looked at registered voters in the community. You can buy, if you go to the local registration office, the local voter office, you can buy a list of, or get a list of registered voters. We then took that list of registered voters and segmented it into homeowners and non-homeowners. The homeowners one, we segmented that into people with children and those without children. And we did the same for the renter list. Within the one for homeowners, we're able to say, well, talk about how efficiently we use the money and what the benefits you're going to get for your children. The one who didn't have children, we have more of a community approach, right? Invest in it for the generations to come. On the other side, on the renter side, I mean, it's all upside, right? So we can just talk about the facility and the things that are going to be available to kids and the community and all the positives that go with that. And in the process, so we identified this audience. And so in order to reach it, we did create a little website. We went some videos and we showed kids using the facility. We actually, in one case, talked to generations, right, of the old facility that was replacing the grandfather who used it when he was growing up, and then his son and his son,
I love it.
And just built out all of these little vignettes and stories. We went to PTA meetings. We went to coffees, chamber coffees and stuff like that. So meet and greet. We did do yard signs. We did do door hangers. So we did a whole bunch of stuff like that. But the other thing that happens is in the state of Oregon, as you know, everything's vote by mail. It has been for like that 25 or 30 years,
Right.
just because the cost benefits of running an election through the mail. Um, but we know when those ballots are going to drop, right? So we were able to go out with a direct mail campaign with those tuned messages to hit an audience right when it was announced. We were able to go out with another campaign and hit the registered voters the day before ballots arrive in the mail, because some people get their ballot and they just vote right away, but some people set them aside and wait until election day. So then we were walking through doing other marketing, and then we hit them again the week before election day. And the results were really interesting. I mean, the last time they had a bond measure, which was years ago, it barely passed. By they stayed up all night waiting for it. It was like it passed by 12 votes or something. And in our case, we got overwhelming support. I mean, it wasn't even close. But we did use a whole range of tools to reach people. We defined this journey, the voter's journey, and who they were, and understood their interests and what drove them, and then used the right tools to move them through this journey and create a successful outcome. And I think with a lot of products, an election is a product of sorts. We've got an action we want people to take. But I think you have the same kinds of problems. You've got this, or challenges as a marketer, because you've got this journey that you want your buyer, consumer, supporter to take. And what does that journey look like, and how do you move them through? And there are some journeys that direct mail can play a very big role in. We do work for one company that works with people who have tax liens, and they will reach out and say, "Hey, we'll help you save your home. Call us." And that's pretty compelling, right? And then we have other campaigns where we're just one element. We have a customer who does, he does. I'm thinking of the right terms. They work with, they remove insects and stuff, but at certain times of year they're more prevalent than others. And so he does all kinds of different things to make homeowners in his area aware. He does use direct mail too, but he uses a host of other things as well, because he's found over time that those are effective ways to reach his consumer as well.
Mark, I'm Wilson. I really love the fact that you highlighted the need to use multiple marketing verticals to reach your audience. One, right? If you're just only using social media to reach your audience, you're probably not hitting everybody, because some people still do only accept that snail mail, emails, all these other nature.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, Wilson, what I really loved is the way you really talked about the need to create market segments in order for you to properly track your consumer's journey. I think that's really important for everybody to understand. The way Wilson broke it out, right? The homeowners versus non-homeowners, the homeowners that had kids versus the homeowners that did not have kids, and then understanding their psychologically and how they're gonna choose versus not choose. Then understanding, I really like what you mentioned too, is creating a value proposition for each of those market segments, right? So that first iteration, like Wilson mentioned, before the election, sends out a flyer with a value proposition, making them aware of what the bond is. That was that first one, because Wilson's mentioned it, right? You're bringing them down your journey, right? And then you said 10 days before the election, they send out another one. And I'm assuming that message was probably more, again, a little bit more of a value proposition, but as well with a call to action and to vote yes, right? Or whatever the case may be. And then the after that, now you have to, like you mentioned, after the bonds passed, now it's kind of like it's kind of going down that sales funnel, right? You had the awareness, right? And then you had the evaluation, and then you had the conversion of them actually voting yes. Well, now after that's the retention. You got to make sure you promise on the goods and keep on showing, hey, by the way, here's what the bond's done. Here's where we were at as a community before. Here's where we infused the bond funding, and here's now where the community is at. Now, I got to tell you how difficult this probably was Eastern Oregon is a very rural community, or a frontier almost. There's not very many individuals out there. It's very rural. There's not a lot of big box shops. So asking a community that's relatively small and doesn't have a large ecosystem or economy there to put forth some funding for a bond out of their own pocket is a large ask in any state as it is. Rural and frontier communities, it's very difficult. And so for them to not only accept it, but overwhelmingly accept it is quite remarkable. But I think that also goes back to Wilson, a lot of the marketing strategies that you guys employed.
No, exactly. And I mean, the other thing that happens along this journey is that we're educating people, right? And so the message changes towards the end. I mean, we can get more succinct, more to the point, because by the end, we're not telling people, there's a bond measure or what it is. People already know. So by the end, we're in persuasion mode, right? Here's why this is a good idea. Here's why you need to do this today.
Yeah, yeah, and I really, again, it's such a fascinating thing to think about, folks. When we're trying any marketing campaign, right? If you hear the word campaign, usually it means multiple steps, multiple layers, and like Wilson alluded to, the mail, that's in-person mail that's actually going to be sent to your home. The social media is also going to be a part of it. Radio campaigning, newspaper, getting on a podcast. There's so many different marketing verticals that you can go down to really get your message out there. Because again, there are different people find and use information differently. They might go to Reddit, they might go to X, they might go to Facebook. They might go to so many different other sites. So it's kind of important for you to also diversify the way you actually communicate and brand and market your own company. Now, Wilson, what are, first and foremost, awesome job out there in LeGrand. I love LeGrand, folks. If you have not been out to LeGrand, go check it out. Eastern Oregon's out there. I was actually out in Kennewick, Washington, not too long ago. It's still about another 2, maybe 3 hours away from that borderline, but beautiful, beautiful area. Go drive down I-84. Just gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous. Again, Oregon, and I'm always I'm a love for Oregon because I'm born and raised here. I love all 94,000 square miles of it. But Wilson, you mentioned your other product. Can you talk about that product and kind of how it differs from your current product? I believe you were that one's a little bit more focused, correct?
Right. So with the direct mail product, it's one to many. With Speedy, it's one to one. And in the one to many space, our niche is that we do, honestly, unlike most direct mail places, we do mostly first class mail rather than standard A. And our focus is on really quick turn times. So if you want to be able to reach somebody tomorrow or the next day, I mean, the closest you're ever going to get is using Zairmail. I mean, because we use automation from end to end, and we've got tools that'll do, kind of lights out, kind of automated mailing where you pop in a list, pop in a document. The software automatically break it into slices, schedule it, send out a slice every day, send confirmations, work on the responses. So we built out an entire automation, automated software infrastructure to deal with this problem. And we can hook into outside applications. I'm seeing some people doing that now. We've been doing that for 10 plus years. So we focused a lot on that. And unlike a lot of larger mailers too, we don't do as many, jobs that are 1 million, 2 million pieces. Most of the stuff we're doing is 50, 100,000 pieces, but we'll do them 2-3 times a week to, feed a call center or something like that. So that's our primary business. Speedy is really, as I mentioned earlier, is meant to address this idea of the market that's being settled with a postal meter today. So the idea of a postal meter, traditionally, for those people that don't know, is it's a piece of equipment that you send a letter through and it puts postage on it. And you say, well, big deal. Why is that important? Well, the reason why it's important is because in the old days, postage, well, not even just in the old days, the postage still is money, right? I mean, stamps
Yeah.
cost money, and you can exchange them for money.
Yep.
So a lot of companies look at postage, managing postage, like managing money, just like they manage their bank accounts or their investment accounts, or you know, a treasury operation, if you will. So in that case, Pitney Bowes provides a machine, piece of equipment that allows you to track your postage. And these days, it used to be in the old days, you had to take that machine down to the post office and they'd fill it. They'd put postage in it, you'd pay cash, and then you'd use that to put, postage on your envelopes. Nowadays, you can hook it in the internet, you can fill it electronically, but the idea is the same. So you've got folks that are taking these, producing letters, and they're putting it through this machine, which puts postage on it. We would call that the mark that pays for postage. We call it an indicia in the industry. So they put an indicia on the envelope, pay for postage, and then they take it to the postal service. Well, it kind of misses the point, though, of the pain point. So when you're thinking about doing a mailing of a letter like that, you have to compose it. You have to print it. You have to fold it. You have to find an envelope. You need to address the envelope. You need to insert the envelope in it. Then you need to address the envelope. You need to put a stamp on it. You need to put it in the mail. And then who knows what happens to it? Maybe it gets delivered. Maybe it doesn't. But there's no tracking, no confirmation, no anything. And so if you're thinking about a process like that in this day and age of automation is very frustrating for businesses and consumers alike. The problem is not putting postage on the envelopes. I mean, you can get stamps at Safeway these days, at the supermarket.
Yeah.
So when we sat back and looked at that, we said, well, we have the tools. We could just automate the whole thing from end to end. So you've got a letter, you just drop it on this icon, say, give it an address. You can type the address or you can pull it out of your address book. And we just take it from there. We compose the letter, we fold it, we insert it, we address it, we mail it, we track it, we send you confirmation when it's delivered. And you could do one letter, or you can give us a whole list and we'll do a dozen letters. And it's all just as fast and easy. So we seem to we thought that was or we still think that's a great application. The challenge for us right now, we feel, is just awareness. I mean, so there are millions of potential mail users, and how do you let them know that you've got this product and the benefits it can deliver? So that's really what we're worried about most right now. We've got a network, a production network. We've got the software. We've got an application that works. But how do we let people know that this application is out there and ready to make their life easier?
Yeah, well, one good way is coming on the Shades of Entrepreneurship, speaking with Mr. Gabriel Flores right here. And
Exactly.
we'll write up a blog on the shadesofe.com. So again, folks, make sure you subscribe to the Shades of E. Now, one thing you mentioned I want to ask about, what is the difference between first class and standard A? And why should, when I'm mailing something, why should I take that into consideration?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're doing, I'm sorry, I just looked off into the air.
Oh, by all means.
When you're doing mailing, I mean, a lot of folks are really interested in reducing the cost, which is a legitimate concern. That mail costs money. It's not like, sending an email, which probably costs money too. But I mean, you can send 1,000 emails for a quarter of a penny, so
Yeah.
it's not as big a concern. But it turns out that when you're sending mail, about 70% of the cost is postage. The production costs money, but it's in the big scheme of things, it's not the biggest factor. So when I'm thinking about sending a letter, there are a number of different choices with postage, but the two primary choices are first class and standard A. These aren't even really a choice for a consumer or even for some businesses, because in order to do standard A, you need a special piece of software that's expensive, and you need to know how to use it, and you need the same piece going to a bunch of addresses. So typically standard A is more appropriate for marketing mail or marketing organizations that are going to send out a lot of mail, but it can save you as much as 20%, 20 cents a piece. So it can be significant depending upon how the mail sorts down. And I won't burden your listeners with the details of that. But the basic idea is that the more densely I can sort the mail down to a carrier route, so the Postal Service doesn't have to support it. It's called work sharing. I do that work so the Postal Service doesn't have to.
Gotcha.
If I can just hand a carrier a stack of letters and say, these are all on your route, that
Yep.
saves them time. That's going to be cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So when you're using a tool like Zairmail, though, you can choose between first class or standard A because we do that automation for you. The trade-off is really has to do with the class of service and delivery speed. So if I'm sending stuff first class mail today through our network, anyway, I know there's some different reports through the news and stuff, but through our network, using our service, we tend to see 2 to 3 day delivery times anywhere in the United States. So that's pretty reliable. If you're using first class mail, you'll get that performance, or you should get that performance. We can't control it once the Postal Service gets it, but that's what we're seeing. And if the Postal Service can't deliver it, they'll return it to you so that you can update your database. For somebody who's not a frequent mailer, maybe that doesn't have a benefit, but for somebody who's mailing all the time, being able to correct your database so you don't send letter after letter after letter turns out to be important. If you want to use standard A, rather than 2 to 3 days, we tell our customers count on 7 to 10 days, its best efforts. And if the Postal Service can't deliver it, they just recycle it for you. So you won't get it back.
Gotcha.
Part of the cost reduction is because the letter doesn't have to try. If they can't deliver it, it doesn't have to travel through the network a second time.
Right.
They can just get rid of it. So there is also a difference in response rates we find. If a first class mail, people tend to perceive that as being higher quality or a more important message.
I was thinking the same thing. I do the same thing. For some reason, I see the first class mail. I'm like, oh, this must be important.
Exactly.
I don't know why.
Well, exactly. And most transactional mail, like credit card statements, brokerage account statements, things like that, always comes first class mail.
Yeah.
And so consumers are programmed to believe that, or to expect that, not just believe. We're not tricking anybody. That's just kind of the reality.
Yeah.
And then standard A, which is usually people associated. In the old days, we call it standard A now. The Postal Service is trying to rebrand it to be marketing mail. But in the old days, we called it bulk mail, right?
Oh, yeah, bulk mail.
And so a lot of people, they see bulk mail and they feel like, it's not as important. They're going to put it aside or maybe not open it at all. And so, the question becomes, how do we increase the importance and get that letter opened? So these are all just kinds of things we deal with. We do a lot of work, as I mentioned, because we're fast turn and mostly first class. We do a lot of work with short run mail, 4,000, 5,000 pieces. With an automated equipment, it doesn't matter. If you have a mailing of 5,000 pieces and you go to a commercial printer or mail house, most of them don't even want to deal with that. They'll send you somewhere else if they can, if somebody else wants to talk to you. But for us, it's all automated. So we don't really care. If it's one piece, as I said with Speedy, we'll mail that for you. But if you're doing 5,000 pieces, maybe you're not concerned with shaving a little bit of postage. Maybe it makes more sense just to maximize or, shorten the delivery time frame and get responses as quickly as you can. So we see most of our short run marketing mail like that is first class because people just want the responses. They want the sales. They want to drive activity in the channel. And they're willing to pay a little bit extra to do that.
Yeah. Who would you say, talking about the size of mails that can be sent out, who would you say from the size of the mail that you're going to send out to maybe down to the business? I'm not sure if you guys get that granular, but who would you say is your typical client or your target audience? Who would be best served by using your software?
Well, I mean, everybody's going to be better served by using our software. I can't think of anybody who wouldn't.
Fair enough. So I
But
guess I would
beyond
say,
that,
let me say this. For those, maybe there's folks that are listening, who are the folks that should be reaching out to you to learn more about this product?
yeah, I can answer it in a couple of ways. So traditionally, I mean, if you think about our marketplace, we do, we've done a lot of business with realtors, mortgage brokers, independent insurance agents, and then a bunch of different industries, landscapers, um, pest companies, pool maintenance companies, people who I need to reach out on a seasonal basis. But really, realtors forever, they do those just sold, just listed
Yeah.
kinds of
Yep.
postcards. Interest rates are low now, and they have been for a long time, so we're not as doing as much mortgage stuff right now. But when the interest rates have been up for a while and they go down, we do a lot of cash out refis and things like that. I mean, it's a very good tool to reach people. Um, and a lot of the mail we do today, we're doing stuff on, for tax liens. We're doing stuff on, um, trying to alert people on regulatory issues, election issues, things like that. Stuff that's going to be a relatively quick turn. Honestly, a lot of work with people who have call centers, because if you have a call center, imagine you've got a call center, you've got a room full of people just sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. They're waiting for the phone to ring. I mean, because of things like the do not call list and consumer opinions towards calling, outbound calling. Um, well, I guess for the consumer, it would be inbound calling. It consumer, if I get a call these days, a cold phone call, the reaction is not good. I mean, people are
Never is.
that is not a fun job. I mean, so a lot of the outbound call centers you used to see, a lot of those have gone away. And because of the do not call list too, a lot of the phone numbers are not available for consumers. I mean, sometimes somebody will give us, customers will give us a list and will ask us to append phone numbers. And I think the append rate is now close to 10% or 15%. It's really low. Businesses, it's still high. Um, and you can get consumer numbers. It does take. There's a process. You need a SAN number, and you have to register, and so it's not an easy process either. But if I have a product or sale, especially if I'm doing, these days, if I'm doing e-commerce or I want to take those orders in person, then if I have a call center with people sitting around waiting for calls, one way to make the phone ring is with mail. And it's a lot more controllable than things like search engine optimization because it's proactive. So there's a couple of things that mail does that no other medium can do. One is that it is delivered to every household and business in America 6 days a week. So, and it does that by mandate. So, um, it's going to be able to reach people. Secondly, it's proactive. If you're thinking about search engine optimization or something, which is a great tool, it's a tool we use too, but you really have to wait for people to come find you. But a lot of times I want to drive sales on my timeline, not necessarily just wait for the customer. And so with direct mail, I'm able to do that or better do that. Thirdly, is targeting. I mean, if you're trying to, it's very hard to target through people through email or for search engine marketing because the demographics are sketchy. I mean, there's some places they're there, some places they're not. The granularity is not really great.
Yeah.
But I get that if I wanted to reach out to Jewish dentists in New Jersey that have purchased a car in the last six months, that list exists. I can do that. And so if I want to reach a very specific audience, this is a great tool for that. And then finally, as we talked about with inbound calling and the way consumers respond to that, mail has built into the American psyche. The U.S. Postal Service wants to talk about the mail moment, right? They romanticize it. People are just waiting around for their mail every evening. It's not, there's not quite like, music from the heavens in my house when the mail arrives. But I will tell you that I check it every day. It's something I look forward to. It's just part of my daily routine. It's not like receiving a cold phone call. And because of that, it can be a lot more effective than some other tools, especially reaching consumers.
Yeah, this is very remarkable. Again, I really like it how it's different marketing medium that people don't really think to explore. Because again, within digital world, I think people kind of forget about the snail mail, right? As they used to be called back in the day as well. But truth be told, if I find something of value that's being sent to me, I tend to again to Wilson's point, you do have a very short amount of time for when you get something in the mail so it reaches my hand till it reaches the recycling bin. It's a very short amount of time. So that value proposition, like Wilson was mentioning with the work that he did in LeGrand, it really has to be stated pretty quickly, and it has to really catch them. So going back to the intent of the market segment being that that's really important because it's going to allow you to refine your message, that value proposition, which is going to allow you to them to basically stop from the trash can, right? And they'll actually continue to read that piece of mail. And I also really like the first class piece. Again, I would encourage folks, if you have the option between standard and first class, to go first class, because again, the opportunity to get that information back. So then you can actually take those individuals off your CRM and take them off your mailing list. So you're not continuously ordering new prints and sending them out, because print is just as expensive as mail, folks. So if you're printing flyers and doing something of that nature where you're actually sending a hard copy of something, getting that information back from the first class and getting it labeled and removing it from or adjusting the address that maybe it was inaccurately inputted, that is very important, right? Because that's also going to be able to save you money. So I really like the use case for this product, and I really like the way it could really continue to evolve. Now, Wilson, for folks that are interested in learning more about you, maybe learning more about your product, where can they find you online?
Well, we're online. You can find our website at www.zairmail.com. And once again, that's like airmail, the word airmail with a Z on the front. And if you want to use Speedy, anybody can use Speedy. They can download it today and have that icon on their desktop and be ready when they want to mail. It's www.zairmail.com/speedy. Or, you can reach us old school telephone too, 888-898-0066. We're happy to answer and help you out.
I love it. I
So
love how you just had that ready to go. That 1-800 number just right there off the tip of your tongue, ready to go.
I mean, so many people these days are trying to avoid talking to customers. We love talking to customers.
I tell folks, if you guys get out there, you got to network with people. The world is not as scary as I think some people try to make it out to be. There's a lot of awesome people out there. And I think to Wilson's point, you're not going to really find how does the market segment actually like to be communicated to, but also what is their pain points? Because once you identify the pain points, then you actually can create your value proposition around that. Right. But if you're not getting out in the community, you're not meeting with people, you're not shaking hands, kissing babies, it's really difficult for you to understand what the community is going through, what the market's going through. So it's really difficult for you to message to that without truly getting in there, understanding what their pain point is. Wilson, again, thank you so much for this conversation. Really, really cool. I'm going to check out Speedy. Folks, go and check out the shadesofe.com. Make sure you subscribe to the website. We're going to have a blog post, a newsletter with Wilson's information. This will also be available on YouTube, as well as for those Patreon members. It'll be available a week early for $5 a month. You'll have Wilson's conversation. We'll have the transcriptions. We'll also have a bunch of link backs to his team, so you guys can have some more information there for you guys. Again, Wilson, thank you again. Is there any last words you have before we leave?
Once again, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. And I guess what I would say is, when you're thinking about reaching out and touching people, think about the mail. It's a great way to do it. And at the end of the day, we should all get Speedy.
I love it. All get Speedy. Maybe that's going to be the tagline. We should all get Speedy. Well, Wilson, thank you again so much. Again, folks, check out the shadesofe.com. Please subscribe. You can also visit us at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you and have a great night.